The first delivery I ever made in Black Hollow, Vermont, was to a house that didn't exist on any map. I'd only been in town a week, fresh from Burlington, chasing a job that promised quick cash and no questions asked. The pizza shop was a squat, faded building on the edge of town, its neon sign flickering like it was on its last legs. My boss, Hank, was a wiry guy with eyes that never seemed to blink, and when he handed me the order for 47 Old Mill Road, he gave me something else too, a crumpled piece of paper with rules written in smudged ink. "Follow these, kid," he said, his voice low, like he was afraid the walls were listening. "Don't ask why. Just do it." I was 23, broke, and skeptical. I figured it was a hazing ritual for the new guy, some small-town nonsense to mess with me. The rules were bizarre: never deliver after 8 p.m. If the house looks wrong, leave the food on the porch and go. Don't look at the windows. If you hear singing, drive away and don't look back. There were 10 rules in total, each one weirder than the last, but I stuffed the paper in my pocket and grabbed the 2 pizzas, 1 pepperoni, 1 cheese, headed for my van. It was 7:30 p.m., and the sun was already gone, swallowed by the dense pines that choked Black Hollow's roads. The van's engine sputtered as I pulled out of the lot, the headlights cutting through a fog that seemed to rise from nowhere. Black Hollow wasn't like Burlington. It was a place where the world felt thinner, where the woods pressed in too close, and the silence was loud enough to make your ears ring. I'd taken the job because it was simple: deliver pizzas, get paid, go home. But as I drove deeper into the countryside, the GPS on my phone blinked out, the signal dropping to nothing. I was left with Hank's scribbled note and a vague sense of direction: Old Mill Road, a mile past the rusted bridge. The bridge came up fast, its iron frame eaten away by rust, creaking as I crossed it. The road beyond was barely a road at all, more like a dirt path carved through the forest, twisting between trees so old their branches scraped the van's roof. The air smelled of wet earth and something sour, like fruit left to rot. I kept one hand on the wheel, the other on the pizza boxes, trying to ignore the way the darkness seemed to move just beyond my headlights. Shadows flickered at the edges of my vision, but when I turned my head, there was nothing. Just trees. Just the road. By 7:45, I was deep in the woods, the path narrowing until the van's sides brushed against low branches. The dashboard clock ticked closer to 8 p.m., and Rule 1, never deliver after 8, gnawed at me. I told myself it was fine. I'd be quick. But the road kept going, winding deeper, no signs, no mailboxes, no hint of civilization. My phone was a brick, no bars, no map, just a blank screen reflecting my own tired face. I was starting to think I'd missed the turn when my headlights caught something: a house. It wasn't right. The house at 47. Old Mill Road was a wreck, a sagging heap of gray shingles and splintered wood, like something left to die. The roof was caved in, one corner dipping low enough to touch the ground. The porch was a mess of wet leaves and broken boards, and the front door hung open, swaying in a breeze I couldn't feel. The windows were the worst part: black, not just dark, but painted over with something thick and glossy, like tar. I checked the address on the order slip: 47 Old Mill Road. This was it. But it didn't feel like a place anyone lived in. I glanced at the clock: 7:58. 2 minutes to spare. I could have turned back, told Hank the place was abandoned, but I needed the money, and I didn't want to look like a coward on my first night. I grabbed the pizzas, stepped out of the van, and immediately regretted it. The air was colder here, sharp enough to bite my skin, and the smell was stronger: rotting apples mixed with something metallic, like old blood. My boots crunched on the gravel path leading to the porch, each step louder than it should have been in the stillness. Rule 2, if the house looks wrong, leave the food on the porch and go. This place looked wrong. The walls seemed to lean inward, like they were sizing me up. The windows didn't reflect anything, not even my headlights. I set the pizzas down on the porch, careful not to step on the rotting boards, and turned to leave. That's when I heard it, a low hum, coming from inside the house. Not singing, not exactly, but a chant, slow and deep, in a language that made my stomach twist. The words were wrong, all vowels and sharp edges, like they weren't meant for human throats. Rule 4, if you hear singing, drive away and don't look back. My heart started pounding, a dull thud in my ears. I should have run right then, but I didn't. I was stupid, curious, thinking maybe it was a radio or a TV left on in the empty house. I glanced at the nearest window, breaking Rule 3. Don't look at the windows. The black glass shimmered, and something moved inside it, not a reflection, not a shadow, but a shape. It was tall, too tall, with limbs that bent wrong, too many arms branching out like a spider's legs. It pressed against the glass, not touching it but inside it, like it was trapped in the surface, watching me. I stumbled back, tripping over the porch steps, the pizza boxes sliding into the leaves. The chanting stopped, and the door creaked wider, revealing nothing but darkness inside. My breath caught in my throat, and I ran, fumbling for the van's door. The keys slipped in my sweaty hands, but I got it open, climbed in, and slammed the gas. The van lurched forward, tires spitting gravel, and I didn't look back. I couldn't. I felt it, though, something heavy, like a hand on my neck, watching me as I drove. The road seemed longer going back, the trees closing in tighter, their branches scraping the van like fingers. My headlights caught flashes of movement. Shapes darting between the trunks, but I kept my eyes on the road, gripping the wheel until my knuckles turned white. The rules were in my pocket, but I didn't need to read them. They were burned into my head now, each one a warning I'd ignored. When I got back to the shop, it was past 9 p.m. Hank was waiting, leaning against the counter, his face half-lit by the flickering neon sign. He didn't ask about the delivery, just held out his hand for the keys. "You followed the rules, right?" he said, his eyes searching mine. "Yeah, I lied," my voice barely steady. "Dropped it off, no problem." He stared at me, too long, like he could see the truth crawling under my skin. Then he nodded, handed me the next order, and said, "Stick to the rules, kid. They're there for a reason." I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that shape in the window, its too many arms reaching for me. The rules were still in my pocket, crumpled and damp with sweat. I didn't know what I'd seen, but I knew one thing: Black Hollow wasn't just a town. It was something else, something that didn't want me there. And I'd already broken its rules. The morning after my first delivery to 47 Old Mill Road, I woke up with the taste of fear still sour in my mouth. My apartment, a one-room dump above a shuttered hardware store in Black Hollow, felt too small, the walls too close. The rules were still in my pocket, folded tight, their words looping in my head like a bad song: "Don't look at the windows. If you hear singing, drive away." I'd seen that thing in the glass, tall, wrong, with too many arms, and I couldn't shake the feeling it had seen me too. My hands shook as I made coffee, the cheap machine sputtering like it was mocking me. Outside, the Vermont dawn was gray, the pines beyond my window swaying in a wind that carried that same rotting apple smell from the night before. I wanted to quit, to pack my bags and drive back to Burlington, but rent was due, and my bank account was a sad $47.32. The pizza shop was my only shot, and Hank had made it clear: no deliveries, no pay. So I pulled on my jacket, stuffed the rules deeper into my pocket, and headed to work. The town looked different now. Black Hollow's main street, with its sagging storefronts and cracked sidewalks, felt like it was watching me. The few people out, a guy sweeping leaves, a woman walking a dog, kept their heads down, avoiding my eyes. It was like they knew something I didn't. At the shop, Hank was behind the counter, slicing pepperoni with a knife that looked too sharp for the job. "You're late," he said without looking up. His voice was flat, but his hands paused, the blade hovering over the meat. I mumbled an apology, clocked in, and checked the delivery board. 3 orders, all local, a farm on Route 12, a trailer park off Birch Street, and a house near the old quarry. Normal enough. No Old Mill Road. I exhaled, pretending I wasn't relieved. The day's deliveries were uneventful at first. The farm was just a grizzled old man who tipped me a crumpled $1. The trailer park was a maze of rusted homes, but the customer, a tired woman with a baby on her hip, took her pizza without a word. The quarry house was empty when I got there, so I left the order on the porch, following Rule 2 like it was gospel. But every stop felt heavier than it should have. The air was thick, the silence too deep. I kept checking my rearview mirror, expecting to see that shape from the window, but it was just me and the empty roads. By late afternoon, the sky was bruising purple, and the woods seemed to creep closer to the pavement. I was on my last delivery, a small order to a cabin off a dirt path called Shadow Lane. The rules were in my glove box now. I didn't want them touching me, but I'd memorized them. The cabin was normal, a tidy little place with smoke curling from the chimney. I knocked, handed the pizza to a guy in a flannel shirt, and turned to go. That's when I saw it. At the edge of the road, where the trees swallowed the light, a figure stood. Tall, thin, with limbs that didn't move right, like they were jointed wrong. It was too far to see clearly, but I knew it was the thing from Old Mill Road. My stomach dropped, and I fumbled my keys, dropping them in the dirt. I bent to grab them, my heart hammering, and when I looked up, it was gone. Just trees, swaying in the wind. I told myself it was a trick of the light, a shadow, anything but real. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking as I drove back to the shop. The rules were screaming in my head now: don't look at the windows. Don't look back. I'd broken them once, and something had noticed me. Back at the shop, Hank was mopping the floor, the air thick with bleach. "Good day?" he asked, not meeting my eyes. I nodded, avoiding the truth. I didn't tell him about the figure, or how the woods felt alive, watching. He handed me my cut of the tips, $10, and said, "Tomorrow's busy. Don't be late." I left without a word, the rules burning a hole in my glove box. That night, my apartment was worse. Every creak was a footstep, every shadow a shape with too many arms. I locked the door, checked the windows, and kept the lights on, but it didn't help. Around midnight, I heard it, a whisper, faint, like it was coming from the walls. My name, over and over, in that same guttural tone from Old Mill Road. I grabbed a kitchen knife and sat on the couch, staring at the door until dawn. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. The rules were all I had, but they weren't enough anymore. The next day, I was back on the road, delivering to houses that looked normal but felt wrong. A woman at one stop stared at me too long, her eyes glassy, like she was looking through me. A kid at another grabbed the pizza and slammed the door before I could speak. And every time I drove past the woods, I saw flickers of movement, shapes darting between trees, too quick to pin down. I started keeping the radio on, loud, to drown out the whispers that followed me now, even in the van. By the end of the week, I was a wreck. My eyes were bloodshot, my hands raw from gripping the wheel. The rules were my lifeline, but they were also a cage. I couldn't quit, not yet, but I couldn't keep going like this either. On Friday, Hank gave me a new order, his face paler than usual. "Widow's Lane," he said, handing me a fresh set of rules. "Be careful, kid." I took the paper, my fingers numb. Widow's Lane. Another road, another house, another set of rules. I didn't want to go, but I climbed into the van anyway, the figure from Shadow Lane still burned into my mind. As I drove, the woods closed in, and the whispers grew louder, calling my name. I didn't look back. I couldn't. But I knew, deep down, that whatever I'd seen at Old Mill Road wasn't done with me, the order for Widow's Lane came at the worst possible time. It was Friday, 7:15 p.m., and I was already frayed to the bone, my nerves shot from a week of whispers and shadows that didn't belong. Black Hollow had me on edge, its quiet streets and watchful pines closing in like a trap. The rules from my first delivery, to 47 Old Mill Road, still clung to me, their words looping in my head: don't look at the windows. If you hear singing, drive away. I'd broken them, seen that thing with too many arms, and now it felt like it was following me, flickering at the edge of my vision on every delivery. The figure I'd glimpsed on Shadow Lane yesterday, tall and wrong, had only made it worse. I wasn't sleeping, wasn't eating right, just surviving on coffee and the hope I could make rent and get out of this town. Hank handed me the new order as the sun dipped below the trees, painting the pizza shop's windows blood red. Widow's Lane, he said, his voice clipped, like he was spitting out something bitter. 1 cheese pizza. Follow the rules. He slid a new piece of paper across the counter, different from the first set but just as strange, written in the same smudged ink. I scanned it quickly. Don't knock. Leave the pizza exactly 6 feet from the door. If you see a light in the attic, pretend you don't. If the gate is open, close it before you leave. There were 8 rules this time, each one sharper, more urgent, like they were written for someone who'd already messed up. I stuffed the paper in my pocket, grabbed the pizza, and headed to the van, my stomach twisting. Widow's Lane was on the far side of Black Hollow, a dead-end road that barely qualified as a road at all. The van's tires crunched over gravel and mud as I drove, the path narrowing until branches scraped the sides like fingernails. The air was heavy with the smell of mildew and something metallic, like blood left to dry. My headlights carved out a thin slice of visibility, but the woods swallowed everything else, the trees so thick they blocked out the stars. My phone was useless, as always, no signal, no map, just a blank screen mocking me. The dashboard clock read 7:30 p.m. I had to move fast to beat Rule 1 from the first list: never deliver after 8 p.m. The gray house, as the order called it, appeared at the end of the lane, squat and colorless behind a rusted iron fence. The gate was open, creaking on its hinges, swaying in a wind that didn't touch the trees. The house itself was a low, ugly thing, its shingles peeling like dead skin, its windows dark except for a faint flicker in the attic. Rule 3: if you see a light in the attic, pretend you don't. I looked away, my pulse thudding in my ears, and parked the van just outside the gate. The air was colder here, sharp enough to sting my lungs, and that metallic smell was stronger, mixed with something sour, like the rot from Old Mill Road. I grabbed the pizza and stepped out, my boots sinking into the soft earth. The rule said not to knock, so I didn't. I paced out 6 feet from the door, set the pizza down in the dirt, and straightened up. The house was silent, but it didn't feel empty. The windows seemed to watch me, their glass dull but alive, like eyes half closed. I turned to go, my skin crawling, and headed for the gate. Rule 4: if the gate is open, close it before you leave. I reached for the latch, my fingers brushing the cold iron, when I heard it, footsteps, soft but deliberate, crunching behind me. I froze, my breath catching. The sound was close, maybe 10 feet away, coming from the direction of the house. I spun around, breaking another rule without meaning to: don't turn back. The pizza was still there, untouched, but the attic light was brighter now, pulsing like a heartbeat. Nothing else moved. No one was there. Just the house, the fence, and the woods pressing in. I told myself it was an animal, a deer maybe, but the footsteps were too heavy, too human. I forced myself to face the gate again, my hands shaking as I pushed it shut. The latch wouldn't catch. I pushed harder, leaning my weight into it, and something cold brushed my hand, not a breeze, but solid, like fingers curling around mine. I yanked my hand back, stumbling, and ran for the van. The footsteps followed, circling now, slow and steady, like whatever it was didn't need to rush. I didn't look. I couldn't. I climbed into the van, slammed the door, and fumbled the keys into the ignition. The engine roared to life, and I peeled out, the gate still open behind me. The road seemed to twist tighter as I drove, the trees leaning in, their branches scraping the van's roof. My headlights caught flashes of movement, shapes darting between the trunks, too tall, too thin, but I kept my eyes on the path, my hands white-knuckled on the wheel. Back at the shop, Hank was waiting, his face pale under the fluorescent lights. "You closed the gate, right?" he asked, his voice sharp. I opened my mouth to lie, to say I'd followed the rules, but my throat was dry, and the truth spilled out. "It wouldn't latch," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Hank's eyes widened, just for a second, before he turned away, muttering something I couldn't hear. He didn't look at me again, just handed me my tips. $3, and told me to go home. I didn't argue. I drove back to my apartment, the whispers louder now, my name echoing in the wind. I locked the door, checked the windows, and sat on the couch with a baseball bat, staring at the shadows. They moved when they shouldn't, stretching too long, too thin, like they were reaching for me. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak was those footsteps, every flicker of light was the attic glow. The rules were useless now, broken and tattered in my pocket. I'd let something out, and it wasn't just watching me anymore. It was close, closer than it had ever been, and I didn't know how to stop it. The night after Widow's Lane, my apartment felt like a coffin. The walls creaked, the shadows twitched, and every gust of wind outside my window carried my name, whispered in that same guttural tone I'd heard at 47 Old Mill Road and the Gray House. I hadn't slept properly in days, my eyes gritty, my hands trembling from too much coffee and too little peace. The rules, both sets, the first from Old Mill and the new ones from Widow's Lane, were scattered on my kitchen table, their smudged ink glaring at me like accusations. I'd broken them. I'd looked at the windows, turned back when I heard footsteps, left the gate open. And now something was out, something that knew me, something that followed me home. I sat on the couch, gripping a baseball bat, staring at the locked door. The bat was useless, I knew that. Whatever was out there wasn't the kind of thing you could hit. The memory of that cold touch on my hand at Widow's Lane, the solid, finger-like brush against my skin, kept replaying, making my stomach churn. The clock ticked past 2 a.m., the silence of Black Hollow heavier than ever. Outside, the pines swayed, their branches scraping the building like claws. I told myself it was just the wind, just my mind cracking under the strain, but then I heard it, footsteps, slow and deliberate, crunching on the gravel lot below my window. I didn't look. I couldn't. Rule 4 from the first list burned in my head: if you hear singing, drive away and don't look back. It wasn't singing, but those footsteps felt like the same kind of warning. I clutched the bat tighter, my knuckles aching, and waited. The sound stopped, but the air grew colder, the room dimmer, like something was sucking the light away. My phone, useless as always in this town, sat dark on the table. No signal, no help. Just me, the rules, and whatever was outside. By dawn, the footsteps were gone, but I wasn't okay. My reflection in the bathroom mirror looked like a stranger, pale, hollow-eyed, with dark circles carved under my eyes. I called in sick, my voice hoarse over the phone. "Not feeling good, Hank," I said, expecting him to argue. He didn't. He just said, "Get better, kid," and hung up. That should have been a relief, but it wasn't. Hank's voice had an edge, like he knew something I didn't, like he was waiting for something to happen. I stayed inside all day, the curtains drawn, the rules spread out in front of me. I read them over and over, trying to find a way out. Don't knock. Leave the pizza 6 feet from the door. Close the gate. I'd failed that last one, and now the town felt different, like I'd torn a hole in whatever kept it safe. I wanted to leave Black Hollow, to drive back to Burlington and never look back, but my van's tank was near empty, and my wallet was thinner than ever. I was trapped, tied to the pizza shop and its deliveries, tied to the rules. Around 6 p.m., there was a knock at my door. I froze, the bat in my hands again. No one visited me here. I didn't have friends in Black Hollow, didn't know anyone beyond Hank and the faceless customers. The knock came again, harder, rattling the cheap wood. I crept to the door, peering through the peephole. It was Hank, his face pale, his eyes darting like he was afraid of the hallway. I opened the door, and he pushed past me, shutting it quick. "You didn't close the gate," he said, not a question. His voice was low, urgent, like he was holding back panic. "You let it out." I tried to explain, the latch wouldn't catch, the footsteps, the cold touch, but he cut me off. "You don't get it, kid. The rules aren't a game. They're a deal." He pulled a new piece of paper from his jacket, smaller than the others, with just 3 lines written in shaky handwriting. "You gotta fix this. Tonight." I stared at the paper, my hands numb. The rules were simple but heavy: go back to Widow's Lane. Walk the perimeter of the gray house 3 times, clockwise, saying, "I return what I took." Don't stop, no matter what you hear. There was no delivery, no pizza, just me and this ritual. Hank's eyes were wild now, his hands shaking worse than mine. "Do it right, or it won't stop," he said. "It'll come for you. For all of us." I wanted to say no, to tell him to do it himself, but his face stopped me. He wasn't just scared. He was desperate, like a man who'd seen what happened when the rules were broken. I nodded, took the paper, and grabbed my keys. Hank didn't follow me to the van. He just stood in my doorway, watching, like he was saying goodbye. Widow's Lane was worse at dusk. The road was narrower than I remembered, the trees closer, their branches weaving a ceiling that blocked the fading light. The air was thick with that metallic, rotting smell, stronger now, like the woods were bleeding. My headlights barely cut through the fog, and the van's engine sputtered, like it didn't want to be here either. I parked outside the gray house, the rusted gate still open, creaking louder than before. The house looked alive, its windows glinting like eyes, the attic light pulsing faintly. I stepped out, the new rules clutched in my hand, and started walking. "I return what I took," I whispered, my voice shaking as I circled the house. The ground was soft, sucking at my boots, and the air grew heavier with each step. On the first lap, the woods were silent, but I felt it. Something watching, close, its presence like a weight on my chest. I kept my eyes on the ground, avoiding the windows, avoiding the light. "I return what I took." On the second lap, the whispers started. My name, low and guttural, coming from the trees. Not human, not animal, just wrong, like the chanting at Old Mill Road. I didn't stop, didn't look, just kept walking, my voice louder now. "I return what I took." The whispers grew, overlapping, a chorus of voices that weren't voices, clawing at my ears. My legs felt like lead, but I forced them to move, rounding the house again. On the third lap, the footsteps came back. Heavy, deliberate, matching my pace. They were close, just behind the fence, circling with me. I didn't turn, didn't break the rule, but my heart was slamming so hard I thought it'd burst. The air was freezing now, my breath clouding in front of me, and the attic light flared brighter, casting shadows that moved wrong, too long, too thin, with too many limbs. "I return what I took," I said, my voice cracking, barely audible over the whispers and steps. I finished the third lap and ran for the van, the footsteps chasing me, louder, faster. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I slammed the door, started the engine, and drove, the gate still open behind me. The road stretched longer than it should have, the trees closing in, their branches scraping like they wanted to keep me. When I finally hit the main road, the whispers faded, but the weight on my chest didn't. I'd done the ritual, followed the rules, but it didn't feel like enough. Something was still out there, still watching, and it knew my name. The drive back from Widow's Lane left me hollow, like I'd left a piece of myself behind at the gray house. The ritual, walking the perimeter 3 times, chanting, "I return what I took," was supposed to fix my mistake, to seal whatever I'd let out by leaving the gate open. But it didn't feel fixed. The air in Black Hollow was heavier now, the pines sharper against the night sky, their branches clawing at the edges of my headlights. My van rattled as I sped toward town, the rules from Hank's latest note crumpled in my fist. Don't stop, no matter what you hear. Don't look at the house. I'd followed them, barely, but the whispers calling my name, the footsteps matching my steps, they were still with me, echoing in my skull. My apartment was no refuge. The lock clicked shut behind me, but the walls felt thinner, the shadows longer. I didn't turn on the light. I couldn't bear to see what might be waiting in the corners. The baseball bat was still on the couch, useless against whatever was out there. I sat in the dark, the rules spread out on the table, their ink smudged from my sweaty hands. The first set from Old Mill Road, the second from Widow's Lane, and now this third, shorter list, they were piling up, each one a chain tying me to this town. I hadn't slept in days, my eyes burning, my body running on adrenaline and fear. Every creak of the building was a footstep, every gust of wind a whisper of my name. I tried to piece it together. The thing in the window at Old Mill Road, with its too many arms. The footsteps at the gray house, the cold touch on my hand. The ritual Hank forced me to do. It wasn't random. Black Hollow was hiding something, and the rules were part of it, a leash to keep me in line. But I'd broken them, looked at the windows, left the gate open, and now something was loose, something that knew me. I wanted to call Hank, to demand answers, but my phone was dead, as always. No signal in this cursed town. Just me and the dark. At dawn, I dragged myself to the pizza shop, my head pounding, my hands unsteady. Hank was there, sweeping the floor, his movements slow, like he was carrying a weight I couldn't see. "You did it, right?" he asked, not looking up. "The ritual?" "Yeah," I said, my voice rough. "Walked the house." Said the words. He nodded, but his eyes flicked to mine, searching, like he didn't believe me. "Good," he said, too quick. "You're off today. Rest up." He turned back to his broom, but I caught the tremble in his hands, the same shake I'd seen in my own. I didn't go home. I couldn't. The thought of my apartment, with its creaking walls and whispering shadows, made my skin crawl. Instead, I drove to the edge of town, to a gas station where the clerk barely looked at me as I bought coffee and a stale donut. I sat in the van, the rules in my lap, trying to make sense of them. Don't stop. Don't look. They weren't just instructions, they were warnings, a contract with something I didn't understand. I thought about the ritual, the way the air had thickened, the footsteps circling me. Had it worked? Or had I made it worse? By evening, I couldn't avoid it anymore. Hank's words, "It'll come for you. For all of us," kept looping in my head. I had to go back to the gray house, to see if the ritual had done anything, to prove I wasn't losing my mind. I drove to Widow's Lane as the sun sank, the sky bruising purple. The road was the same, narrow, choked with trees, the air thick with that metallic, rotting smell. The gate was still open, just as I'd left it, creaking in the wind. The gray house loomed ahead, its windows glinting like eyes, the attic light pulsing stronger now, like a heartbeat. I parked, my hands shaking as I pulled the rules from my pocket. I didn't need a pizza this time, just the words and the walk. I stepped out, the air colder than before, sharp enough to cut. The ground was softer, sucking at my boots, and the woods were silent, too silent, like they were holding their breath. I started the first lap, my voice low. I return what I took. The house seemed to lean closer, its walls breathing, the attic light flickering in time with my steps. On the second lap, the whispers came back. My name, over and over, from the trees, the house, the air itself. Not human, not animal, just wrong, a sound that clawed at my bones. I kept walking, eyes on the ground. The rules screaming in my head, don't stop. Don't look. The footsteps joined in, heavy, deliberate, just behind the fence. They matched my pace, circling with me, closer now. I could feel them, like a weight pressing against my back. I return what I took, I said, louder, trying to drown out the whispers. On the third lap, the air turned to ice. My breath clouded in front of me, and the attic light flared, casting shadows that moved wrong, too tall, too thin, with limbs that bent like branches. The footsteps were louder, right behind me now, and the whispers became a chant, my name twisting into something else, something older. I didn't stop, didn't look, just kept walking, my voice shaking. I return what I took. The ground trembled under my feet, like the earth was waking up, and the house groaned, a low, guttural sound that wasn't wood or wind. I finished the third lap and ran for the van, the footsteps chasing me, faster now, the whispers a roar in my ears. I slammed the door, fumbled the keys, and drove, the gate still open, the house watching. The road stretched longer, the trees closing in, their branches scraping the van like they wanted to pull me back. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I couldn't. But I felt it, something heavy, close, like a hand on my neck, following me out of Widow's Lane. When I got back to my apartment, the shadows were waiting. They moved when I turned on the light, stretching across the walls, too many limbs, too many arms. The rules were useless now, broken and meaningless. I'd done the ritual, said the words, but it hadn't fixed anything. It had only made it worse. Something was out, and it wasn't just following me anymore. It was here, in my apartment, in the air, in the dark. And it knew my name, the entity's presence didn't leave me after the ritual at the gray house. It clung to me like damp rot, its whispers seeping into my dreams, its shadow stretching across my apartment's walls even with every light blazing. I hadn't slept properly in weeks, my body a husk running on fear and black coffee. The rules, 3 sets now, from Old Mill Road, Widow's Lane, and the ritual, were scattered across my table, their smudged ink a reminder of every mistake I'd made. I'd looked at the windows, left the gate open, turned back when I heard footsteps. Each broken rule felt like a crack letting something in, something that knew my name and wasn't letting go. Black Hollow was no longer just a town. It was a cage, its pines and dirt roads closing in tighter every day. The air was thick with that metallic, rotting smell, stronger now, like the earth was bleeding. I couldn't stay in my apartment anymore, the shadows moved too much, the whispers too loud. So I spent my days driving aimlessly, avoiding Widow's Lane and Old Mill Road, trying to outrun the thing that followed me. But it was everywhere, a flicker in the rearview mirror, a shape darting between trees, a cold touch on my neck when I closed my eyes. The pizza shop was my only tether to reality, but even that felt wrong now. Hank barely spoke to me, his eyes darting away whenever I tried to ask about the rules or the ritual. The other drivers, 2 older guys who kept to themselves, worked their shifts in silence, their faces pale, their hands unsteady. The customers were worse. They'd take their pizzas without a word, their eyes glassy, like they were looking through me. Once, a woman at a farmhouse grabbed the box and whispered, "Don't go to the woods," before slamming the door. I told myself she was crazy, but her words stuck, burrowing into my already frayed mind. It was Monday when I overheard something that changed everything. I was in the shop, wiping down the counter, when the 2 other drivers, Tom and Ray, started talking in low voices by the oven. They didn't see me, or maybe they didn't care. "He's been to Widow's Lane," Tom said, his voice barely a whisper. "He's marked now. Like the others." Ray grunted, glancing at the door. "The ones who watch, they don't let go. Not once they've got your name." I froze, my rag dripping soapy water onto the counter. "The ones who watch." The words hit like a punch, tying together the figure in the window, the footsteps, the whispers. I wanted to confront them, to demand answers, but they clammed up when they noticed me, their eyes cold and guarded. I didn't push. I couldn't. But I knew I had to find out what they meant, what Black Hollow was hiding. That afternoon, I skipped my last delivery and drove to the diner on Main Street, the only place in town that felt halfway normal. It was a greasy spoon with cracked vinyl booths and a jukebox that hadn't worked in years. The waitress, an older woman named Clara with a smoker's rasp, poured me coffee without asking. I'd seen her before, always friendly but distant, like everyone else in town. Today, though, I needed answers. I leaned forward, keeping my voice low. "Clara, what's with the woods around here? People keep saying things." Her hand paused mid-pour, coffee splashing onto the counter. She didn't look at me, just grabbed a rag and wiped it up. "You're the new delivery guy, right?" she said, her voice tight. "Quit while you can. Don't ask about the woods. Don't ask about the rules." She walked away before I could press her, but her words were a warning, sharp and final. I left the diner, my head spinning. The rules, the woods, the ones who watch, it was all connected, and I was caught in the middle. I drove to the edge of town, past the sagging barns and rusted mailboxes, until I found a payphone outside a gas station. My phone was still useless, no signal, so I called my old roommate in Burlington, hoping for a lifeline. "Hey, man, I need a favor," I said when he picked up. "Look up Black Hollow, Vermont. Anything weird about it?" He laughed, thinking I was joking, but promised to check. An hour later, he called back, his voice uneasy. "There's nothing, dude. No news, no history, just some old forum posts about missing hikers and weird lights in the woods. Place sounds like a ghost town. You okay?" I mumbled something about being fine and hung up, but I wasn't fine. Black Hollow was hiding something, and I was part of it now. The next day, I went back to the shop, my hands shaking as I clocked in. Hank was there, his face paler than ever, his eyes bloodshot. "No deliveries today," he said, not looking at me. "Stay out of trouble." But I couldn't stay out of it. The whispers were louder now, my name echoing in the van, in the shop, in my head. I waited until Hank left for a smoke, then slipped into his office, a cramped room with stacks of receipts and a locked filing cabinet. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I needed something, anything, to explain what was happening. The cabinet was locked, but the desk drawer wasn't. Inside, I found a notebook, its pages yellowed, the handwriting shaky but familiar. It was Hank's. The first page was a list of names, dates, and addresses. Delivery drivers, going back decades. Some names were crossed out, with notes like "gone" or "taken." My name was at the bottom, written in fresh ink, with "Widow's Lane" next to it. My stomach dropped. I flipped through the pages, finding sketches of a figure, tall, thin, with too many arms, and notes about the pact. Keep them fed. Follow the rules. Don't let them in. I shoved the notebook back and left the office, my heart pounding. Hank was outside, smoking, his back to me. I didn't confront him. I couldn't. But I knew now, the deliveries weren't just a job. They were an offering, a way to keep something at bay. And I'd broken the rules, let it out, marked myself. The whispers followed me home that night, louder, closer, chanting my name like a promise. I locked the door, checked the windows, but it didn't matter. The shadows were inside now, moving, watching, waiting. The notebook in Hank's office was a splinter in my mind, its pages of names, crossed-out drivers, and sketches of that thing with too many arms gnawing at me. Black Hollow wasn't just a town, it was a trap, and I was caught, marked by the entity I'd let out at Widow's Lane. The whispers followed me everywhere now, my name hissed in the wind, in the creak of my apartment's floorboards, in the hum of the van's engine. Sleep was a memory, my body propped up by coffee and fear, my eyes bloodshot from watching shadows that moved when they shouldn't. The rules, Old Mill Road, Widow's Lane, the ritual, were useless now, broken by my mistakes, but I clung to them, hoping they'd tell me how to survive. I couldn't go back to the pizza shop, not yet. Hank's words, "It'll come for you." For all of us, and the notebook's mention of the pact had cracked something open. The ones who watch, the thing in the window, the footsteps, they were tied to Black Hollow, to the deliveries, to me. I needed answers, not more rules. The town was too quiet, its people too guarded, but there was one place I hadn't tried, the library. A small, sagging building on the edge of Main Street, it was the kind of place you'd miss if you weren't looking. I'd driven past it 100 times, never thinking it held anything but old books and dust. Now, it was my only shot. The library was open when I got there, just before noon, the sky a flat gray that made the pines look sharper, meaner. The air carried that same metallic rot, stronger now, like the town was rotting from the inside. Inside, the library was dim, the air thick with the smell of moldy paper and wax polish. Shelves loomed high, packed with books that looked untouched for decades. The librarian, an older woman with wire glasses and a tight bun, sat at a desk, her eyes flicking up as I walked in. She didn't smile, just nodded, like she'd been expecting me. I didn't know where to start, so I wandered the aisles, my boots creaking on the warped floorboards. The history section was a single shelf, half empty, with books on Vermont's logging days and colonial settlements. Nothing about Black Hollow, not at first. I pulled out a faded volume on local folklore, its pages brittle, and found a chapter on the Hollows. It mentioned strange lights in the woods, missing travelers, and rituals to appease the watchers. My hands shook as I read, the words too close to what Tom and Ray had whispered, the ones who watch. I kept digging, finding newspaper clippings tucked into another book, articles from the 1970s about missing hikers, a delivery driver who vanished near Old Mill Road, and a fire at the gray house that left no bodies but plenty of questions. The deeper I went, the worse it got. A journal, hidden behind a stack of encyclopedias, was the real find. Its leather cover was cracked, the pages filled with handwritten notes in different inks, different hands. It was a record of Black Hollow's deliveries, going back to the 1940s. Names, dates, addresses, some matched the notebook in Hank's office. The journal described a deal with something in the woods, something that demanded offerings, food left at specific houses, rules followed to the letter. Keep them fed. Keep them out. The last page had a sketch of the thing I'd seen, tall, thin, with too many arms, and a warning, break the rules, and they take you. I was halfway through copying the journal's key pages into my phone's notes when the librarian appeared behind me. "You shouldn't be reading that," she said, her voice sharp, her eyes cold. I stammered, trying to explain, but she cut me off. "Leave it alone, boy. You're in deep enough." She snatched the journal, her hands steady despite her age, and walked away, locking it in a drawer behind her desk. I wanted to argue, to demand it back, but her stare stopped me, glassy, like the customers, like she wasn't all there. I left the library, my head spinning. The journal confirmed what I'd feared, the deliveries were a ritual, a pact to keep something ancient and hungry at bay. I was part of it now, marked by my mistakes at Old Mill Road and Widow's Lane. The whispers were louder as I walked to my van, my name chanted in that guttural, inhuman tone. The shadows moved, stretching across the pavement, too long, too thin. I drove back to my apartment, the journal's words burning in my mind, "They take you." That night, the entity was closer. The whispers filled my apartment, coming from the walls, the ceiling, the air itself. I locked the door, checked the windows, but it didn't matter. The shadows danced, forming shapes with too many limbs, their edges blurring into the dark. I sat on the couch, the baseball bat useless in my hands, the rules useless on the table. I'd found answers, but they only made it worse. Black Hollow wasn't just a town, it was a feeding ground, and I was the latest offering. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. The whispers grew into a roar, my name a curse that shook the walls. By dawn, I knew I had to go back to the shop, to confront Hank, to find a way out. But as I stepped outside, the air was wrong. Colder, heavier, the metallic rot so thick I could taste it. The pines leaned closer, their branches like fingers, and in the distance, I saw it, a figure, tall and thin, standing at the edge of the woods, watching me. It didn't move, but I felt its gaze, heavy and hungry, promising it wasn't done with me. The figure at the edge of the woods stayed with me, its silhouette burned into my eyes like a brand. I'd seen it before, the too tall, too thin shape with too many arms, at Old Mill Road, at Widow's Lane, and now here, in broad daylight, watching me from the pines. Black Hollow was closing in, its secrets spilling out like blood from the journal I'd found in the library. The rules, the deliveries, the pact, they were all part of a deal to keep something ancient and hungry at bay, and I'd broken it open with my mistakes. The whispers never stopped now, my name a constant chant in the air, in the walls, in my head. Sleep was gone, replaced by a jittery haze of fear and exhaustion, my body barely holding together. I couldn't go back to my apartment. The shadows there were alive, stretching and twisting with limbs that didn't belong. The pizza shop was my only anchor, but even that felt like a trap. Hank's notebook, the library's journal, Clara's warning at the diner, they all pointed to the same truth: I was marked, chosen by the ones who watch, and there was no running from it. But I had to try. I drove aimlessly through Black Hollow's dirt roads, the metallic rot in the air so thick it coated my throat. The pines loomed closer, their branches scraping the van, and every shadow flickered with movement, shapes darting just out of sight. By Tuesday, I was back at the shop, my hands shaking as I clocked in. Hank was there, his face gray, his eyes avoiding mine. "Got a new order," he said, sliding a slip across the counter. "Hollow Creek Road. 1 cheese pizza. Follow the rules." He handed me a new piece of paper, the ink fresh but shaky, like he'd written it in a hurry. "Don't step off the path. Don't speak. If the door is open, leave the pizza and go. If you see movement inside, don't look." There were 6 rules this time, each one sharper, like they were meant for someone already doomed. I wanted to refuse, to throw the paper back and walk out, but my wallet was empty, and the whispers were louder now, urging me forward. I grabbed the pizza and drove. Hollow Creek Road, a narrow scar through the woods, deeper than Widow's Lane, darker than Old Mill. The path was barely wide enough for the van, the trees so thick they blocked the sky, their roots breaking through the dirt like bones. The air was freezing, heavy with that rotting, metallic smell, and my headlights caught flashes of movement, shapes too tall, too thin, slipping between the trunks. The house at the end of the road was a ruin, its walls blackened like they'd been burned, its windows boarded up except for one, cracked and glinting in the dark. The door was open, a black rectangle that seemed to breathe. I parked, my heart hammering, and checked the rules again: don't step off the path. Don't speak. The path was a thin strip of dirt leading to the porch, flanked by weeds that swayed without wind. I stepped out, the pizza box slick with my sweat, and walked, keeping my eyes on the ground. The air grew colder with each step, the whispers louder, my name a guttural chant that vibrated in my chest. I set the pizza down on the porch, 6 feet from the door, and turned to go. That's when I saw it, movement inside the house, through the cracked window. Rule 4, if you see movement inside, don't look. But I did. I couldn't stop myself. The figure was there, tall and thin, its too many arms unfolding like a spider's legs, pressing against the glass. It wasn't inside the house, it was outside, standing on the porch, inches from the pizza I'd just left. My breath caught, and I stumbled back, breaking Rule 1, don't step off the path. My foot sank into the weeds, the ground soft and warm, like it was alive. The figure moved, faster than it should have, its limbs bending wrong as it glided toward me. I didn't speak, Rule 2, but a scream clawed at my throat as I ran for the van. The whispers roared, a chorus of my name, and the footsteps followed, heavy, deliberate, right behind me. I slammed the van door, fumbled the keys, and drove, the path twisting longer than it should have, the trees closing in like a fist. My headlights caught the figure again, standing in the road ahead, its arms spread wide, blocking my way. I swerved, the van skidding, and it was gone, but I felt it, close, heavy, like a hand on my neck. Back at the shop, I didn't tell Hank what I'd seen. He didn't ask, just took the keys and muttered, "Good job." But his hands shook, and his eyes were glassy, like the customers, like the librarians. I drove home, the whispers louder, the shadows darker. My apartment was worse now. The walls pulsed, the shadows moved, forming shapes with too many limbs. I locked the door. Checked the windows, but it didn't matter. The entity was inside, its presence a weight I couldn't shake. I sat on the couch, the rules useless, my name echoing in the dark, knowing I'd seen it, knowing it had seen me. The encounter on Hollow Creek Road broke something in me. The figure, tall, thin, with too many arms, wasn't just a shadow anymore, it was real, close, and hunting me. Its presence lingered, a weight in the air, a cold touch on my skin even as I drove away from that blackened house. The whispers were constant now, my name a guttural chant that followed me through Black Hollow's twisting roads, into my apartment, into my dreams. The rules, Old Mill Road, Widow's Lane, the ritual, and now Hollow Creek, were useless scraps of paper, their ink smudged and meaningless. I'd broken them all, looked when I shouldn't, stepped off the path, and now the ones who watch had me marked. My apartment was a prison of moving shadows and creaking walls. I hadn't slept in days, my body a wreck of jittery nerves and pounding headaches. The metallic rot that hung over Black Hollow was thicker now, seeping through my windows, coating my throat. I kept the lights on, the baseball bat in my hands, but it didn't help. The shadows stretched, forming shapes with too many limbs, their edges blurring into the dark. I couldn't stay there, couldn't face another night of whispers calling my name. But I couldn't leave either, my van's tank was low, my wallet empty, and Black Hollow's roads seemed to twist back on themselves, like the town wouldn't let me go. The pizza shop was my only option, the last place where I might find answers. Hank knew something, he had to. His notebook, the library's journal, the driver's whispers about the ones who watch, it all pointed to him. I drove to the shop after midnight, the streets empty, the pines leaning closer, their branches scraping the van like claws. The neon sign flickered, casting a sickly red glow over the parking lot. The shop was dark, but Hank's truck was there, parked crooked, like he'd left in a hurry. I banged on the door, my fists shaking, my voice hoarse. "Hank! Open up!" No answer, but I saw movement inside, a shadow crossing the counter, too tall, too thin. My stomach dropped, but I kept pounding, the glass rattling. Finally, the lock clicked, and Hank appeared, his face gray, his eyes bloodshot and wild. "What the hell are you doing here?" he hissed, pulling me inside and slamming the door. "You know what's happening," I said, my voice cracking. "The rules, the deliveries, that thing on Hollow Creek. What is it? What's the pact?" Hank's face twitched, like he was fighting something inside. He grabbed a bottle of whiskey from under the counter, took a long swig, and sat down, his hands trembling. "You weren't supposed to know," he said, his voice low. "None of you were. But you broke the rules, kid. You let it out." He told me the truth, or as much as he could stomach. The deliveries weren't just a job, they were offerings, a deal made long ago to keep the ones who watch from coming into Black Hollow. The houses, Old Mill, Widow's Lane, Hollow Creek, were borders, places where the woods and the town met, where the entities were strongest. The rules kept them contained, kept them fed with pizzas left on porches, a ritual to appease them. But breaking the rules, stepping off the path, leaving gates open, let them through. And I'd done it all. "I'm tired," Hank said, his voice breaking. "Been doing this 30 years. Training new guys, watching them break, watching them get taken. I thought you'd last longer." His eyes met mine, and I saw it, fear, but also something worse, resignation. "You're marked now. They know your name. And they don't stop." I felt sick, my head spinning. "Why me? Why not you?" Hank laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "I'm part of it. Always have been. But I'm done. You're the replacement, kid. That's why I gave you the rules." Before I could answer, he stood, grabbed my arm, and dragged me to the back room. The door slammed shut, the lock clicking. "You stay here," he said through the door. "You don't leave. Not until it's done." I pounded on the wood, screaming his name, but his footsteps faded, and the shop went silent. The air grew cold, the metallic rot stronger, and the whispers started again, my name a chant that shook the walls. I was alone, locked in, the shadows moving around me. The room was small, cluttered with boxes and old menus, but the walls seemed to pulse, the shadows stretching into shapes with too many arms. I tried the door, the windows, but they wouldn't budge. The whispers grew louder, my name a roar, and the light flickered, dimming until I could barely see. Something was in the room with me, not just a shadow but a presence, heavy and hungry, its limbs brushing the air near my face. I don't know how long I was in there, hours, maybe days. The whispers never stopped, the shadows never stilled. When the door finally opened, it wasn't Hank. It was the figure, tall and thin, its too many arms unfolding, filling the doorway. I didn't scream. I couldn't. It just stood there, watching, its presence a promise that I'd never be free. The figure in the doorway of the pizza shop's back room wasn't a shadow anymore, it was solid, real, its too many arms unfolding like a spider's legs, filling the space with a presence that crushed the air from my lungs. Its form was tall, impossibly thin, its limbs bending in ways that defied bone and muscle. I couldn't see its face, if it even had one, but I felt its gaze, heavy and hungry, pinning me to the floor. The whispers that had haunted me since Old Mill Road roared now, my name a guttural chant that shook the walls, the ceiling, my bones. The rules, Old Mill, Widow's Lane, the ritual, Hollow Creek, were nothing, scraps of paper that couldn't save me. I was marked, chosen, and now it was here. I don't know how I got out of that room. My memory is a blur of panic, my hands clawing at the locked door, the window that wouldn't budge, until something gave, maybe the lock, maybe my sanity. I stumbled into the shop, the neon sign flickering outside, casting red shadows that moved wrong. Hank was gone, his truck missing from the lot. The air was thick with that metallic rot, so strong it burned my throat, and the whispers followed me, relentless, my name a curse I couldn't escape. I grabbed my van's keys from the counter, my hands shaking so bad I dropped them twice, and ran. The streets of Black Hollow were empty, the pines leaning closer, their branches scraping the van as I drove. My apartment wasn't safe, nowhere was, but I couldn't stay at the shop, not with that thing so close. I needed a plan, a way out, but my mind was fraying, my thoughts drowned by the whispers and the memory of those arms. The journal from the library, Hank's notebook, Clara's warning, they all pointed to the same truth. The deliveries were a pact, a ritual to feed the ones who watch, and I'd broken it, letting them through. I was the replacement, Hank had said, but for what? To be taken? To become one of them? I drove to my apartment, the only place I could think to go. The stairs creaked under my boots, each step heavier, like the town was pulling me down. Inside, the shadows were alive, stretching across the walls, forming shapes with too many limbs. The rules were still on my table, useless now, but I grabbed them anyway, clutching them like a lifeline. My phone was dead, the payphone at the gas station too far. I was alone, trapped in Black Hollow's grip, the entity's presence a weight I couldn't shake. Then my phone rang. Not my cell, dead as always, but the landline I'd never used, a relic from the apartment's previous tenant. I stared at it, the shrill ring cutting through the whispers. I picked it up, my hand trembling. Hello? My voice was barely a whisper. Kid, you gotta go back. It was Hank, his voice cracked, desperate. Old Mill Road. One last delivery. Finish it, or it's over for all of us. What the hell are you talking about? I shouted, but he was already talking over me. No pizza. Just you. Go to 47 Old Mill Road. Walk inside. Say the words, I give what I owe. It's the only way. The line went dead, the whispers surging back, louder, hungrier. I wanted to smash the phone, to scream, but Hank's words were a hook in my gut. Old Mill Road. The first house, where it all started, where I'd seen the thing in the window. I didn't want to go, but the alternative, staying here, waiting for those arms to reach out of the dark, was worse. I drove, the van rattling, the road to Old Mill Road longer than I remembered, the pines closing in like a tunnel. The metallic rot was everywhere, thick enough to choke on, and the whispers were a roar, my name a chant that shook the van's windows. The house appeared at 7:58 p.m. Its sagging shingles and black windows unchanged, the door still ajar, swinging in a wind I couldn't feel. The rules were gone, no paper, no instructions, just Hank's voice in my head, walk inside. Say the words. I stepped out, my legs lead, my heart slamming against my ribs. The ground was soft, sucking at my boots, and the air was freezing, the rot so strong it made my eyes water. The house loomed, its windows glinting like eyes, watching. I walked to the door, each step a fight against my own body, screaming at me to run. The whispers were deafening now, my name a chorus of voices that weren't human. I crossed the threshold, the darkness inside swallowing me. The air was colder in the house, thick with dust and something else, something alive. The floorboards groaned under my weight, and the shadows moved, stretching into shapes with too many arms. I saw it then, at the far end of the room, standing in front of a cracked mirror, the figure, tall and thin, its limbs unfolding, its presence a weight that crushed my chest. It didn't move, just watched, its gaze a knife in my skull. I give what I owe, I said, my voice shaking, barely audible over the whispers. The figure tilted its head, like it was listening, and the room pulsed, the walls breathing, the shadows closing in. I said it again, louder, I give what I owe, and the figure stepped forward, its arms reaching, not for me but for the air, like it was pulling something out of me. The whispers stopped, the silence worse, heavy and final. It spoke then, not with a voice but with a feeling, a pressure in my mind, stay, or be consumed. The choice was clear, join the pact, become part of Black Hollow's ritual, or let it take me entirely. I saw flashes of the others, drivers from Hank's notebook, their names crossed out, their faces fading into the dark. I saw Hank, his eyes glassy, his hands shaking, bound to this town forever. I saw myself, standing in that house, my name added to the list. I ran. I don't know how I made it out, my body moving before my mind could catch up. The door slammed behind me, the house groaning, the shadows chasing. I reached the van, fumbled the keys, and drove, the road twisting, the pines clawing at the windows. The whispers were back, softer now, but still there, my name a promise they'd never let go. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I couldn't. But as the van slowed, the engine sputtering on the empty road, I saw it ahead, a figure, tall and thin, standing in the middle of Old Mill Road, its too many arms spread wide, smiling with a face it shouldn't have.